Hello again, friends. This is Marley Hawk with Wild by Nature, and this is our fourth and final module for the Nature Connection as a Way of Life series. This week we're going to move into the time and energy of the northwest, the mid-afternoon. We worked hard last week with our north energy and our tracking and focus, and now we're going to relax. We're going to surrender into our bodies and the earth. We're going to internalize our learnings, and we're going to find that place of stillness in our bodies, but empathic connection with the earth and us in it. But before we do, let's go back to the story. Now, if you remember last week, we left our wanderer, our adventurer, Markandeya, and he was in that great sea of abyss, and he felt himself drowning and being pulled down. But he saw something on the horizon that caught his eye, a vision, a green light, something that called forth that energy and motivation and strength and commitment to his cause. And with it, he began to swim, swimming in the direction of that light, even though it seemed an unreachable distance away. Now, in this same story, it appears that the moment he began to swim, Vishnu took notice. And as Vishnu watched one of his creations, committed, determined, willing to put in that effort to move towards that which they truly believed in, might say their vision, then Vishnu was moved. He reached down into that sea of abyss, and he brought Markandeya up in his hand, and he carried him that immeasurable distance all the way back to the shores of the earthly realm, where the green light was indeed this beautiful green earth that he had fallen from. Now, in the story, Markandeya has gone through a great shift. When he first experienced the world through his child mind, his senses, his wonder, and the oneness, he'd seen it as this inseparable beauty that he was a part of. Now he moved into adolescence, and he started to work as a separate individual or a separate being in that system, and experienced the fall, probably that inevitable fall that many of us go through in adolescence or late adolescence, when our world starts to shift and we awaken to some understandings. On this nature connection journey, there's often a point we reach where perhaps we touch on some grief or a sense of sadness or challenge that goes along with a deepening connection, and it's a really important thing to be aware of, because it can easily overwhelm us, because all of a sudden I'm opening these feelings that I didn't realize I had. But if we trust and we're committed, then I know through my own experience and others I've seen and worked alongside, that we can move through it to a stronger place. Because back to the story, when Markandeya came back to the earth with his new mind state and the experiences he'd gone through and that great fall and that great challenge, he now had a renewed appreciation and connection with the earth. He realized at a deeper level this sense of gratitude for the land that he was part of. And so, although he could never go back to that place of innocence, let's say, he could still feel that sense of oneness from a place of gratitude and immersion. And this week's learnings tap into that. They tap into the way that we can start to spiral down into our body and the earth and really reconnect with an embodied sense of nature connection. So a little more on the northwest energy. Northwest. Sun is moving towards the horizon. We've been working hard. We've been busy. We've been foraging or tracking or doing our job or at the desk just trying to get that last bit of last email off, or do that last load of washing, or whatever it is in our life that's had us focus to try and get the morning's work done. Now, of course, in the Western culture, we might have to have a short lunch break. Maybe we'll even eat our lunch at the desk and then go back to work. But in a more natural space, then we might find that we will sit down, we'll have some lunch, we'll start to decompress. And after lunch, we'll notice there's a drop. Now, particularly if we're in nature, even the sounds of the birds and the movement of the mammals all really starts to slow down. There's a grounding that begins to happen. And it's quite likely that our bodies will want to follow that. Because our bodies are inextricably linked to natural cycles. And if we have a look back at this trusty little diagram here, we can see that we've mapped energies onto this 8-directional spiral, 8-directional cycle. And I found in my life, and particularly through observation when in wild nature, that most of the time it follows this flow. It follows this spiral flow that we come in with the inspiration as we orient and feel welcomed and oriented. We have that play and movement energy. We have that focus, challenge, perspiration, and then we move into a place of resting and wandering. And beyond that too, but we're going to focus just on this first 4 parts of the wheel energetically. You'll see in the notes, you can have a closer look at it and maybe get a deeper sense of how they have different. The energy continues to spiral and how that's applicable not just to a day, but also a month, a year, our lifetimes, the cycle of a plant, the cycle of the moon, and many of the natural cycles follow this. Even just the breath from breathing in and that type of breathing is an excellent model for moving into this northwest energy and bringing in some new core routines. The most powerful being that of wandering. Now, to move into the place of wandering, there's a couple of things we might need to do for ourselves, particularly if we're coming from any sense of busyness or stress or overexertion that might be happening in our lives. Not uncommon. I've just had a really big week and I've got some big weeks coming, so I'm trying to sneak in all the northwest energy I can. And we can be doing it at little points through the day, in a similar way to when we had our first module and we had that idea of having a trigger, like the wind. And that allowing us to pause, take a breath, and relax our senses. And in this part of the wheel or the spiral, our senses might start to be more focused inwards, more focused on what our body's telling us, on the sensations that are moving through our body. Maybe we've got some tightness, or maybe we've got some bubbling anxiety, or maybe we're starting to feel a heaviness or a foggy headedness, or maybe we feel light and gentle. We might have different sensations operating at the same time. The key is that these sensations are talking to us, our body's talking to us. Our body's an incredibly intelligent piece of technology, far more intelligent probably than any book I can read or self-help, any self-help workshop I can do, or even a therapist, if we can really tune into it. Sometimes we need help to get there, but if we can get there, then our body's going to speak to us. And those messages are worth hearing because it knows what it needs. It knows what it needs. Through that gut instinct, through that heart brain, and through the mental brain too, but particularly tuning into this nervous system that exists in our bellies and in our heart center. And there's more and more research to support the power of these places, and particularly the power of them in guiding us with decision making that's satisfactory, with making choices that are good for ourselves and our bodies, whether it's something like diet, whether it's choosing a car or a partner or a house, or just whether it's letting ourselves follow a direction. So that's one really important tool in our kit, is tuning into our natural needs. Now, if our natural needs start to tell us that we're feeling heavy or we need some rest or downtime, we've got some options. In the modern world, it's easy to choose an option like going and sitting on the couch, vegging out, watching some telly or a screen, maybe eating some comforting food, particularly when we're stressed or anxious. I know I can slip into that pattern, particularly when I lose awareness. And there's no judgment around that. We are creatures of our context. It's important not to feel any sense of negativity or criticism because I'm not operating from what I believe would be natural or the right place to be. I think we can really be gentle on ourselves and compassionate and empathic and know that we are part of our environment. So if we do want to start to meet our natural needs, then of course it helps to take ourselves to a natural environment. So maybe rather than going towards the default option, if that is a default option for us, we can think, well, perhaps I could go outside. Perhaps I could go to my backyard. Perhaps I could go out to my sit spot. Perhaps I could go to the beach. Perhaps there's a park I can access. Perhaps there's a place I can go where I can actually start to tune in more deeply to my natural needs. And surprisingly, what may surprise us is how nature begins to reflect that to us. It almost begins to speak to us in the same way our body does. And so we have this beautiful interaction with nature. And we might begin to go into what we call a wandering state. And a wandering state is when we just get to follow our body, and it has this beautiful interplay with our environment, and we just move through it as we feel. There's no agenda. There's no A to B. There's no focus lock. It's just moment to moment. What's drawing us? And if that means lying down on the earth and resting and breathing and sleeping, then so be it. If that means climbing a tree and sitting there and having a rest up in a tree, so be it. And you might find that energy starts to come back, and then we have this sort of recycling, and we've got energy to move more, or to move stuff, or to move quickly. Our bodies know. It's just a matter of getting there. So that's the movement, that's the energy of the Northwest. And like in the story with Markandeya, it might be said that as we start to sink and spiral into our bodies and the earth, then the earth or the universe or whatever it is that's supporting us reaches that big hand down and goes, okay, I'm going to help you out here. Because it realizes we're connected. And that wandering that we're talking about might be a practice or a core routine we do as part of our day, or at a stage in our week. But in a way, our whole life is a wandering. And particularly for a lot of humans who come into this deep nature connection world, they get inspired, they start to play with practices and explore, and it's like we're becoming a child because we have this newfound curiosity and enthusiasm and vitality, and then we might find something we focus on and we really try to learn that, and we're in that north energy, and then we might find there's a shift internally in how we feel ourselves in the world, and often that shift can lead to some restructuring or redirecting of the way we do things in our life. And it is possible, and I might even say a very enticing invitation to those who start to feel called beyond just beyond just wandering in our environment, but really deepening our wandering into our life, exploring our purpose and place in this earth, in this community. What is it that calls me and draws me, so that these moment to moment tuning into needs starts to tune into a much deeper story, a story in which perhaps this mystery has a very important role or place for me in it. That I am this incredibly important being, this incredibly important node in this incredibly complex and diverse web of life. And that the closer I get to that, the more that I'm supported to take that place, the more I feel this sense of connection. because that's the place that in the future I would be working from, giving back. But before I can really give to the world, before I can really offer myself in all of my wonderful, unique beauty, it feels to me, it seems to me, that we've really got to spend some time deepening and going, okay, what am I really about? And that's pretty much what this deep nature connection journey takes us to. It takes us to that place. So when I called this course Deep Nature Connection as a Way of Life, it wasn't a gimmick. Because I've seen how something that seemed like a practice or a thing I would do started to weave more and more into a way of being, and now I'm in it. I'm in the river. You know, there's no turning back. Like, the flow has taken me, and this is a way of life. How could it be anything else? That's the way to my wild nature. That's the way to my wild nature. So, at the heart of it all, this is what I'm hoping is going to be inspired in us out there. And it's a long journey, and perhaps many of you are already like many steps on that journey. Perhaps you've been exploring it for years and deeper in your own way. I'm just hoping that this is adding to that, or supporting that, or it's helping that spiral. New threads of connection are being built through the practices we've been doing, and possibly the ones you're going to continue to do. So that's the idea. That's the idea. Beginning to follow our wild wisdom. Our wild wisdom. The one that innately you have. You have it, and you know what's best for you. Your body, your heart, your mind, your soul place. That knows what's best. So that's the real voice of guidance, not these videos. I do hope we're awakening that up more and more. So I'm going to offer you some home play for this week, and then I'm going to finish with a poem. So 3 activities this week, very related to the Northwest and what we've been talking about. The first invitation is to start to practice taking a moment or two or some time to tune into our body and its sensations and its needs. So in a similar way to in week 1, we had that trigger, pause, breathe, relax our minds, bodies, eyes, senses. We might start at the external world and listen to or feel the wind, the bird sounds, or all of the sounds in the distance. And let that awareness spiral in to the feeling on my skin, sensations of sun, temperature, and then into my body. And just start to scan it and take note of any places that I'm holding maybe some tension or some opening, or perhaps a bit of energy and a need to move here, or perhaps a heaviness. Or a hunger. A hunger for what? Just taking some time to tune into those body sensations and maybe ask the question, oh, what are you asking for? What are you trying to communicate to me, body, with this? And giving that, whether it's just moving in my seat a bit, standing up and going for a walk, lying down for a bit, having some food, I need some conversation, I need to move to get some energy out, or I just need to take some time out to myself. And if possible, meeting that need or communicating that need to the world, if possible. Not always, but if we practice that through our day, I wonder how that will start to change the way that we move through the world. Less on the concrete path, more on our own wild track. Second activity, taking that into a more natural space. So here we need a bit more time. And we might go to the place where we're sit spotting, or a local park, or if we really have time, to a more wild place. And in that place we find a spot to begin. And perhaps we'll lie down on the earth. Perhaps we'll do it in the afternoon after a day's work. We'll just lie down on the earth and start to breathe and start to let our energy spiral down through our body into the earth. And as our mind state starts to shift and relax and let go and surrender, then we feel our body again. And then we ask our body, what is it you would like to do? And then slowly we get up. And we've got a term called navigation. Maybe it's your belly, some people it's the solar plexus or the heart, or just this feeling of being drawn outward in a direction. Not to a destination, but just the next step. And then we start to go out and wander and just let our bodies guide us, our bodies and curiosity guide us, and see what it's asking as we move through the landscape. It will ask us to move in particular ways towards particular things. It will ask us to meet its needs as best we can in that space. And we can spend as long as possible in that timelessness. I do encourage walking gently and slowly. I do encourage softening our eyes and trying to take a wide angle vision and keeping our eyes off the ground and breathing. And I highly encourage listening to the birds. Wonderful, wonderful bringers of peacefulness. And let ourselves wander. And I'd love to know how that experience changes your mind state or changes your day or starts to change your week and possibly your life. The third and final one, no guesses, it's to share the story. Of course, to share our story. Now what you might find with these sorts of experiences as they're a bit more deeper leveled, that there could be more emotional content. There could be more sometimes unsettling or sometimes deeply inspiring content that comes up that we feel. And it may be reflected in our experience in nature. We may actually come across these really powerful images through, say, a particular spider in a web in a place that just calls us, or a tree speaks to us in a certain way, or animal encounters. Who knows what will come through. These types of messages and experience, I believe, we need to be a bit more careful with. Now, maybe they're safest just in a journal. Or maybe you know someone who you trust as a mentor or can hold that elder energy, and we seek them out. Because if we look back to the web and the idea of opposites we spoke about last time, if we're in a deep place of wandering and seeking in a way, then we're going to kind of need this almost spiritually evolved, or I don't know. Yeah, they're kind of in that spiritual leadership role. Those who are approaching death with a sense of egolessness and understanding, these are the ones who can hold the seeds and the stories that come from the wanderer. For the wanderer is going deep, and they're the ones who can support us. So I really encourage to find that community or those humans in our lives to share this part of the journey with. I'd be happy to catch it. Facebook, maybe not. Or maybe you have an experience that you could share a version of in our Facebook group and get feedback, but perhaps you want to try to contact someone who can really hold that space for you. And if we start to practice these things, these Northwest routines, then hopefully we foster that mind state of relaxation, internalization, and the attribute we're looking to develop is that of empathy, empathic connection to ourselves, empathic connection to our community and our earth. It develops a deep respect for nature. And I think that's a very important attribute, hey, in the modern world. Really need that one. I do. Particularly for ourselves, to be caring and compassionate to ourselves. So I want to say a big thank you to those who've come on this short journey with these 4 modules, this course. It's but a little introduction to the ever widening spiral and ever deepening spiral of nature connection as a way of life. And I do hope it's given you some experiences and some ideas and some inspiration to really continue that journey. I'd love to support that or be part of that. If it feels you want to join the Wild by Nature Village, There's other communities in different areas that you could source out, including the natural community. So I highly encourage you to let your threads go out and find that community, and then begin to co-create it with humans that you respect and have a shared view and a shared vision. And speaking of visions and webs, I'm going to finish with possibly my favorite nature connection poem, which I still don't know by heart. So I'll read it to you, but it's by William Stafford, wonderful poet, and it's called The Way It Is. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die. You suffer and grow old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. I hope you started to reveal that thread, and I hope that you take a hold of it and let it guide you. And I hope it takes you to wonderful places where amazing, marvelous, inspirational things happen, wild things. And I hope that we meet along the way. Take care and play well.